Hello, Gary Simon of designcourse.com, and today is January 20th, and we are going to do two videos, and the second video is going to be released a little bit later today, where I announced the winner of the giveaway contest yesterday that I had. I'm also going to choose the winners right on screen. So today we're going to be designing a loading animation GIF that you can be used on a website when something's downloaded. You can activate it with Ajax and JavaScript and HTML and CSS. But today we're just going to be working solely in Adobe Photoshop CC to do this animation. As always, check out designcourse.com and put in your email. It's going to be courses there in the future. And check out the Facebook page and the other social media accounts. They're linked below in this video. And the project files, of course, as always, are available for free, and the description is in the video. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, let's go ahead to File New, and we're going to call this Loading GIF. I'll make that capital. Width 859 by 600. I'm just going to leave it at that, and then the background contents is just transparent. And if you have any grids that show up, just hit Control-H. You can get rid of those. And I'm going to take this color, which is DB, 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 for the background, fill that in, rename this to background. All right, so now what we want to do is create a rectangle. So we'll take the rectangle tool, we'll click once here, and we will change this to 128 by 128. Now when it comes to icon sizes, you know, there's this kind of a standard size, 16 by 16, then 32, 64, 128, 256, and 512. If you were to create this with the intentions of allowing other people to use it, you could offer this in multiple sizes. For our tutorial, we're just going to use 128 by 128. So I'm going to hit OK, and we're going to make it slightly darker, just so we can see it. Eventually, we're going to delete this, but now what we want to do is go ahead and take the rectangle tool again, and we will just left-click right up here, and I'm going to leave the width at 128, and the height I'm going to make 32. Now, if you take 128 for the height and you divide that by 4, this is what you get. So I'll explain why we're choosing 32 rather in a second here. And I'm going to make this color right around there. 36, 36, 36 for that color code. Hit OK. All right, so I want 3 of these, but I don't want them stacked directly on top of each other. So that's why I chose to divide the 128 by 4, just so we'll have space in between the 3 of these servers. So what I'm going to do now is just focus on designing the content of this first server here, like some buttons. And you don't want to make it too complex, but we'll just get started here. I'm going to go ahead and just drag out right here. Now, when you just left click and you're not pressing any buttons, this is what happens. If you hold Alt, it kind of keeps it there on that same path, and it starts it from the left. So something just roughly around that size. And I'm choosing 65, 65, 65 for that. Hit OK. And then what we want to do is duplicate this. So you can right click, duplicate layer, or set up a hotkey for that, and I just choose Control-Shift-D. That will automatically allow you to quickly duplicate. All right, so now I'm going to take those 3, hit Control-T. We'll just scale that in a little bit and hit Apply. And then over here, I'm going to create some real tiny squares, and you'll see what that will look like. I'm going to zoom up here. So we'll take the rectangle tool, hold Shift, and just make a very tiny square. Then what I want to do is duplicate that, and we're going to be duplicating this quite a bit, and we're going to move it down right there. And then take those 2 first and hit Control-E to merge them, or right click and merge, and then duplicate that. So I'm just going to real quickly keep on doing this, merging them and duplicating them I'll do that one more time. And then we'll take those and merge them, and then pull it down holding Shift and just moving. Okay. We'll hit Control 1 to get back to 100%. All right, and let's take both of those layers, hit Control E to merge them, and when you can use your arrow keys down or up to get that aligned correctly vertically. All right, so that looks pretty decent. You don't want to make anything too complex. So now what we want to do is just rename these. I'm just going to call this grid, and let's take these. We'll merge those as well. Control E. We'll call these buttons, and then we'll take this. Let's call this server. All right, and then we'll take those three and group them. So Control G, and we'll call this server. All right, so now we're going to, let's zoom up again real quick, and we are going to duplicate the group. So Control Shift D, hit OK, and then Control Shift D again, align this to the bottom. And if you go to Auto Select Group with our Move tool, we can just automatically click to select those groups. All right, so now what we want to do is get rid of this, because we now know this is 128 by 128 because it was based on that previous layer. All right, so hit Control 1, and now we basically have the icon static. Basically, there's no animation. We have it designed though. So now to get to the part where we want to start designing this thing, we have to go to Window, and we want to choose Timeline. Then let me just drag that down quite a bit. And in order to get this ready to be animated, we have to click this button, Create Video Timeline. So once you do that, you'll see we have a timeline down here with a representation of all of our layers in our groups. And so what we're going to want to do is try to create an animation that gives the appearance that something is being downloaded. And we want to do it in a kind of like a unique way. So what we want to do is first create a new layer. So we'll take the pen tool, and I'm going to go to sorry about that, View. We want to show the grid, make sure that's on. So, and then go to View and make sure Snap to Grid is on. And so I'm going to create a triangle. So I'm going to click over here, it's just somewhere off the side, and this is going to be a pretty big triangle. So just hold Shift and we'll select right here, and then hold Shift again and we'll select right there, and then we will close that. All right, so now we want to go ahead to View. We'll hide the extras or just hit Control H. Now what we want to do is take this, we'll just call this down arrow, and we'll right click and we'll choose Create Clipping Mask. So you can create a clipping mask that goes onto a group. And so this particular group is the one on the bottom, and I think I want to move this over here. So we'll take this, right click, Create Clipping Mask. That way we're working with the top layer here. All right. Okay, so now what we want to do in order to animate this is go ahead and open up, well actually we don't have to open this yet. Just select the down arrow layer and click this little icon there to bring up all of the properties that we can animate. So basically this is the one right here. You would think it's position, but it's actually vector mask position. So if you click on this little timeline icon, it creates a keyframe. And if we go all the way out to say around right there, and then just take, I know we can't see it, but it's up here. If you turn off auto select group, that won't cause any issues. Hold your Shift button and drag this just to where you don't see it anymore. Actually, we still see it. There. Okay. Now it's completely hidden. So now what happened is it creates this animation. And so if we hit play, all right, that's actually pretty slow. So I'm going to drag this in probably about half the time. So now let's hit play here. We can see the actual speed. And you really could speed that up a little bit more. Take it here to the beginning. I think I'm going to choose like somewhere in between there and there. Okay, so now what we want to do is go ahead and I will move forward just right around there. And we're going to take this and move it back up. Oops, sorry about that. I'm going to undo that. Just move it back up while holding shift. All right, so now if we play that, we could see what that looks like. Okay, so now what we want to do, we want to repeat that process for the other two servers. So I'm going to take this with that layer selected, Control-Shift-D to duplicate that, move it above here to server copy, and right-click, and we will create clipping mask. Now we're going to have to redo these because they're in a different location. So I'm just going to take all these three and delete those. All right, so, oops, I think I may have deleted for both of those because we have both of them selected. Make sure you only have this up here selected. There we go. And let's go back here to the beginning. Now we want it to be just above. So right now it's up there. Now if you just drag it down, we see it's right there. So right there is we want our first keyframe. And then we want these to all match up just for the time being. And so then I'm going to go ahead and drag this down just to right around there. And then we'll make sure this matches up. And then we'll drag it back up. All right. And then one more time. We'll duplicate that. Right click, create clipping mask. And come down here, we'll delete those real quick. Come back to the beginning, drag this down right around there. Oh no, I think I deleted those other two. Let me back up a little bit. So if you hit Control Z, Control Alt Z, you can go back a few times. Okay, there they are. I'm going to make sure nothing else is selected. All right, so let me just delete those. Ah, see, that's what happened. There we go. When you make that selection, you're dragging. If you go too far, actually, I don't even know why it did that. Oh well. They're both there still, so that's good. Okay, so let's go ahead and create the first keyframe there. We'll position it correctly. I think it's right around here. We will move it down just to here and down a little bit further, and then come back up and then pull it up right there. All right, so what we can do so that we can see this looping, first of all, we'll come over here. This allows us to basically focus in on wherever we're at here in the timeline. So just make sure you can see this area. You can pull this here to the left, and that's going to be the length of the GIF. Now, to make sure that it keeps on looping, you click on this little cog right there. You can specify loop playback. So let's just watch this. Oops. Let me get that better in view. All right. So, I mean, it looks okay. It's a little bit fast. What we want to do is play around with the position of the layers so that these aren't all aligning the same. So I'm going to extend this just a little bit. And now we have all three of our, basically our keyframes in view. So what I want to happen is I want this bottom one, which I believe is this layer right here. No, nope, the top one. Yeah, this one right here. I want this one to start first, this arrow. So what we would do is take the other two and we would move the animations forward. So this down arrow for the top one yeah, for the middle one rather, and these two, we're going to select both of those layers, hold Control, and move them forward. Maybe right around there, just a couple frames, and then take only the bottom one, or rather the top, and move that forward as well. And so they're an even distance. So now we can hit play. All right, and that looks pretty cool. So we could play around with it a little bit more even. So we could take this keyframe here, and this is where the arrows goes back up. And let's see here, this is the bottom one. So I'll extend this just a little bit. We'll leave this one here, and then this one we'll drag in real close, and we'll see what that does to the animation. So as you can see, we can play around quite a bit with these keyframes to create different types of animations basically. So it can really affect quite a bit the outcome of the animation. So let me go ahead and stop this. I don't quite like that this one is still visible and this one's not. So let me go ahead, hit stop there. See, this one in the middle ends pretty quick. All right, I think that's better. Hit play. Perfect. All right, so I'm also going to drag in this just a little bit more. All right, cool. All right, so now we're going to consider the animation complete. Now, here's one thing to note. If you wanted to move the actual layers around, that would throw the positions of these off, these arrows in the animation. So to get around that, once you're certain, you know, this is what you want. And I would also save this and save a backup copy of this just in case in the future you wanted to actually edit the animation, because once we go over here on this little icon at the bottom and click on it, we'll see this will convert the timeline to a frame animation. So the timeline keyframes will be emulated in the frame animation, but it will not be preserved. So basically this is a destructive way. We won't be able to reanimate these things again. So just hit continue. And now we have all of these keyframes, or not keyframes, but frames rather. And if we hit play, it'll go through them kind of slowly. But to see it real time, we can go to File, Save for Web, and go to GIF right here. And if you hit play, you'll see how it goes through. Take off transparency. Oops. Real quickly, I wanted to kind of zoom out here. I wanted to show what this looks like, perhaps like on a web form, or how it would be used on a web page. So to design that, we could go ahead real quick, select on the background layer, take on, we're going to leave it on the rectangle tool. And I will create, maybe a little bit taller. Right around here. I'm going to take the background actually and change that. Come over here. Can't see it because it is beneath. And it needs to change here. Make this stand out a little bit more. And I want to take all of these frames, holding shift, and we'll select all of these, basically all the server layers, and we'll position them right here. We'll take downloading right here, You may want to move these down just a tad bit more. And real quick for the rectangle 1 layer, I'll just do a outer glow. Change this real quick. All right, hit OK. All right, so now if we go ahead and view this, basically I did a shortcut for file save for web. Go to GIF, and let's hit forever for the looping options. Now we can see, ooh, it looks like we have an issue in one of the frames. Let me find where that's at. Cancel. So basically we have to find the frame in which this, right there. For me it's frame 46. Unfortunately that got screwed up. I'm just going to take it and throw it away. So now if we just go to save for web, forever, and then now you can't even tell. So obviously you wouldn't really save this. This is just for kind of presentation. What you would do if you really wanted to use it as a loading icon, what I would do is go to File, save this, and then save another copy. So I'm going to save it over here. And then what you would do is go ahead and go to Image, Canvas Size, change this to pixels, back to 128 to 128. Hit OK and proceed. Then I would take all of my frames here, along with the layers over here, move these into position. All right, that looks good. And then go ahead to File, Save for Web, change this to GIF. And then save it out. And we see it is 20 KB, and you can mess around with the options here to make that a little bit less in file size. And that is basically it. All right, so hopefully you enjoyed the tutorial. As always, check out designcourse.com. I'm going to have courses there very soon if they're not already up. And check us out on Facebook. As always, all the links to the social accounts are in the description below this video. All right, so I'm Gary Simon. I'll see you tomorrow.